All right, so we already did this. We already did this discussion already about introduction to Node in NPM. So we just want to look at some code here. So when we're talking about the V8 engine, so if you were to actually take the time to download the V8 engine, which is open source, you can go ahead and do that. Now this is going back a couple lectures, but we actually talked about the V8 engine and what it does and how it's Chrome's JavaScript compiler and how basically it's written in all C++, right? It's not just all written in JavaScript, just like Node.js is you may feel like you're doing JavaScript on the server level, but it's just the semantic sugar over top, the wrapper that in behind the scenes, there's a lot going on and there's a lot of lower level kind of machine level stuff going on in C++ and C. If you remember the infographic that we had, the C and C++ is more in the middle tier that helps transpile it down to machine level code. So if we were to actually start looking through a little bit of the source code, you would actually see in the source it actually references some of those operating systems that may target ARM64, the different processors that it would that again it would transpile down to machine code, and you can see there's x64 in here, and these kind of things, base heap 64. So it starts to target some of the different runtimes, x64 right here. So I assume Windows, or 64-bit processor that'll start to, and inside of that it has a whole bunch of its own assembler type of code. .cc, it means the C# code. So if you actually start looking at some of the stuff, you can actually see that it's pure C#. There's a lot of includes for others. There's just a lot of code in here, right? That this VB engine uses to run the browser, and I mean, gosh, it's probably like 5,000 lines of code here if you care to actually look through it all. And this is happening behind the scenes. If you look at something really simple like I had it here somewhere, but see if I can find it again. Something date.hhh. There's compilers, things like that. Date.cc, sorry, for C#. Sorry, not C#, C or C++, right? So, it's just a really big class, and it has a bunch of stuff in there pertaining to the date function. ECMA, here's something about the ECMA time clip. There's just a lot of code. There's a lot of these things, functions that'll be called in behind the scenes. Like here's year, month, day from days. Year, month, day from days. Geez, if you're working on some of this stuff, if you've ever worked on some of this type of conversions, it's really awful. So when you use something in JavaScript or Node.js, it says, just convert this date to, uh, you know, Pacific time in this format, and it just does it. That's powerful, right? Because behind the scenes, a lot of logic is going on. A lot of logic's already been written here, and basically it passes down before it hits the processor. Goes through a lot of this decompiling and transpiling down, right? Local time zone adjustment, offsets. Like this is a lot of logic in here, right? That bubbles up to the top. Maybe you just have a couple lines of code on your end, but be aware of it. This is the V8 engine. This is the source code that we talked about, and that's what that is. So, but what we were talking about earlier, we were talking about Node.js and NPM. So, provided you went to the website and you installed Node.js at its website, Node.js, and you went down to its official website and you got the download here, and you actually targeted whatever system you had installed it. When you actually install it and it works, in order to verify that, is you use, here's an editor we're using, you should be familiar with it. It's called Visual Studio Code. You may have, there's other iterations out there that you could use. I forget the top of my head one of them I was looking at the other day, but Microsoft Visual Studio Code, you'd come in here and you would start a new terminal window. Once you get inside the terminal window, if you can actually run Node with -v, which is version, and you actually get something back, you know that Node is installed. So basically, Node, from what I can tell here, is running version 12.0 13.1. So I know that it is actually there for me and I can actually interact with the shell. So if I were to actually just do something like this, node, welcome to node.js, now I have the prompts. I could actually run something against it, some JavaScript against it. If I just went 5 plus 5, 15, should equal 20. All right. Var a equals 5. What does that do? Some JavaScript undefined. All right. Var equals 5, console log a. All right. I get 5 back undefined. Okay. You know, if I were to actually do some JavaScript here, you know, x equals an arrow function, console log dot hello, right? And I run that, what will happen? Undefined. Okay, so if I actually have this and then I actually call it, throw a syntax, and x has already been declared. Oh, the joys of live programming, right? All right, what's happening here? So if I declare it once, if I actually call it, there you go. See, I was trying to declare it on the same line. When I had actually declared it in the runtime, it actually existed, and I was able to then call it. It's a variable, so that makes sense to me now, right? It's actually running in the shell, and I'm interacting with the shell. Yeah, you're writing code against the command line, which is not really the greatest, to be honest. So if you wanted to exit out of this, you would go Control C, and you get out of the shell. Let's press it again, and I'm out of that shell. Okay, so that's Node. I mean, now it says that we have that runtime and we can actually work with it, but we want to verify that we have NPM installed, right? So NPM, same thing, NPM version -v. I'm at 6.12.1. So I can actually start using some of those NPM commands that we talked about. So if you notice here, I'm in this folder I created called node intro, and there's nothing in there. So if I went in and I actually wanted to start working with Node.js, before I even do that, I could actually add that file. Say we wanted to do, I don't know, we wanted just an app.js, app.js. We have a JavaScript file. We want to do the same thing that we were, I don't know, we wanted to do something like greeter equals an arrow function using our ES6 syntax, and you know, we just want to do console log hello world. We can do that. So now we have this file, and we have node, the node runtime. We can actually interact with that and say node app.js, and it should go and actually, nope, we actually have to go and actually, again, the same problem as we have declared it, but we need to run it inside of its own file. Let's see if that works. All right, so now we have executed the app.js JavaScript file, and we do hello world. Not a whole lot. I mean, there was not a simple example, but suppose we wanted to, you know, add a date function. We wanted to say, maybe we wanted to add another function here that was current time, current date. So we'll leave this greeter here, and we come along here and we do const current date equals, you know, JavaScript itself has some date functions built into it. Console log dot new date, if I remember correctly. Is it that? I'll have to see here. And if we call current date, let's give me a problem. Save that. So that's going to give me the date, the current date in that very long format, which, you know, to be honest, I need to format that in a bit better way, but there's a lot of hard ways. There's a lot of long things you can do if you manually use vanilla JavaScript to manipulate that date. So maybe you don't want to do it. Maybe you want to use that NPM registry we talked about. Maybe we want to find something there. There might be a package that could help us quickly format that data a bit better. So what we could do is, first we need to run NPM. So we run NPM init, and we're going to do that. And what that's going to do is going to create a package.json file for us. We can do default package name, enter, 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 enter. Okay. So we could just all use defaults for this. And yes, it's okay. And what that's going to do is go create this package.json file right here for us. And if we take a look at that package.json file, it's very small at the moment. It has those questions it asked us. It has a script little file that we could actually run if we wanted to run npm start, npm run test. If we run that test, okay, npm run test scripts, is it run start npm test? I forget exactly oh, there it is, echo no specified exit. So no error, no test specified. So what we actually expected, right? So you can actually run scripts and build this out if you wanted to create like a start. Maybe you had Nodeman running, which is another really good thing. That basically Nodeman's a package that watches your files, and if there's any change, it just refreshes. So you don't have to keep running Node all the time. So anyhow, suppose we need a date function now because we have this app here, this little function. We want to do something with the date. So you'd actually go to the registry. So the registry is npmjs.com. So this is the registry here, the website. So this is the website for the registry. And you would just start looking for things, right? Dates, date format. Okay, date format, right? You would just start looking around. What's something here? Date format. All right, so there's a bunch of things here, right? So date format. If I looked at this one, you'd actually see, all right, what can I do with date format? I can run an npm install date format if I was so choose to do that. And what it does is I have to do some of this stuff here. I have to require it, which we'll learn about. That basically pulls the library in for us to use. So it has a little bit of a markup for us, and it'll format something nicely. But I'm gonna go after one that I know is pretty popular and it's been around for a while. So there's one called Moment. So I'd look at Moment here, and I'd see, okay, it's been published a year ago, and it has a lot of weekly downloads. I mean, we're talking about 6 million. All right, so you know that if that's true, uh, if that is true, then it's pretty popular. I already know a lot about it. It has a website, and there's a lot going on with this. So I've used it before, so I trust this one. And so all I got to do is do npm install Moment, and I'll go out and get it. It has a nice website that has a documentation around. So what I would do is I'd go back to my Visual Studio Code, and I would run npm install. I do short form, just the I, shorthand, Moment, and I want to install that -js globally if I don't already have it. So I want that everywhere now. So what that's going to do is it's going to go and fetch all those packages for a moment, and it's going to come back and say I added one package, and basically it successfully added it. If we go to look at our package.json, no, it actually, sorry, it put it globally, right? So globally means it's to my global node environment. If I wanted to say grab that other one, so I want to install another package, so I'll do something called body parser, or uppercase, which is basically uppercase is some strings if you want, and I said -- save -- dev. Is that flag correct? That's going to go back, and that's going to install it to my local dev environment. So let's see this, what happens after this. So it's going to go pull it down. It's going to ideally add it as a dev dependency to my project, and it's going to update my package.json. So it's fetching all the code for that, and it's going to chug a little bit. In the meantime, I assume that Moment is installed. Let's let that chug. So I can go back to this Moment documentation here, and it has a lot of documentation. So they'll tell you how to use it inside of your inside of Node.js, and inside of here there will be something for display. So maybe I want to use Moment here to display something here. Suppose I want this format with the day, the month, and the year. So I would use something like that. So formatting right out of the box. There's not a lot of coding to do, right? Ideally, you would pass a string in, you would pass the date, moment, new date, and then the format. Let's see what happens here to this thing that's running. Still running. It's still running a lot. It's actually installing a lot of dependencies. But if you notice, it's actually going and building this node module here on the left side. So what that node module is and if you see right now, it's finished up and installed a lot of additional packages, 82 packages. If you notice here, it added a dependency to my package.json here. So it says uppercase and it gives the version number, semantic versioning with this caret, right? We talked about semantic versioning. Basically, that's a dependency now that if anybody gets my project, they can run npm install and grab moment. But what happens is it goes and builds this node module folder. And this is all the JavaScript and dependencies that is needed, surprisingly, for uppercase, that's probably not true. It's probably just grabbing a bunch of dependencies that come along with it. But anyhow, it starts building this folder out, and inside of this, there's a lot of code inside of there, and if you're ever wondering what it is, that's what happens. Anytime you add a dependency, it adds this node module folder, and that's where all the logic goes. If you were to deploy a Node.js project, you wouldn't want to copy up node modules because node modules gets massive, right? Because every time you install something, sometimes it gets the circular dependencies where like it creates another node module, another node module, another node module inside of each one of these dependencies. So it gets really big, right? So you just want to update this package.json, and you could actually ignore ignore the node modules on deployment and just pass up the package.json, so the environment wherever it goes, the developer can just use this and install the node modules on his own machine or in that environment. All right, so we should assume that we have it. All right, so if we were to actually go ahead and do live programming here, let's see, you would have to, let's say I require it. If we go var moment equals require moment. Right, let's see if we can compile that. Let's see if it was actually as easy as that, if I can remember my semantics. And we are actually, all right, through the joys of recorded programming, I was able to pause that quickly and take a look at something, but it looks like we have that there. So if we were actually going to run node app.js, it would actually run, but it would give us this huge data object. So it has this huge data object because I used moment on the new date, and it basically gave me everything I need, too much information here, locale, different things here, right? So we don't want all that. We have days, months, all these things. We don't need that. So maybe we need something a lot smaller. So I'd go back to the docs and I'd say, okay, I just need this format maybe, or I want, yeah, I'll just grab this format here. So what it looks like is on the JavaScript object, I can actually go and add that. So where am I here? So new date dot moment dot new date. So if we go and run that, it should give me a nice date. Oh, it didn't like that. So why not? So it's because I was getting a little bit too eager there, and I missed parenthesis. So there you go. So in order to clean this up, maybe you might want to just say, okay, using our let keyword, let whatever we want to call it, current equal, and we grab this out, so it's actually a little bit cleaner for us, so we can actually see what's going on, so we don't get lost in all these parentheses here. So we move this out here, put a semicolon. So now we have current is that is the result of that moment date call with formatting nice, and we run that, and we get a nice date time. So that shows you how Node works, how NPM works, how it's really important to look through that registry and see, maybe there's some functionality there that you don't want to have to do from scratch. You can pull it down and use it, and it'll save you a lot of time. And that's basically what we've covered today.